and it's still awake. He crouched to examine the controls around the core. Alien buttons, touch panels, levers, some of them still functioned. Others were dead, cracked, or covered in strange corrosion. But Jalen had a gift. He could understand things, even when the instructions were missing. He studied the layout, slowly tracing the circuits with his scanner. Hours passed. Jalen ate a small ration and drank water from his pack, but he didn't rest. The ship demanded attention. Every panel he touched sparked faintly, reacting to his presence. Occasionally, a section of the ship would light up, like it recognized him. Then he found something strange. A map appeared on a floating holographic display. It showed a network of stars, planets, and what looked like other derelict ships, some smaller, some enormous. Lines connected them, almost like pathways of energy. And at the center of it all, a blinking red dot. Coordinates, Jalen murmured. It's pointing somewhere. He traced the lines carefully. Some ships were marked inactive, others active. The core. It wasn't just a power source. It was a control center, able to link with distant machines. Even alien war machines could respond to it if reactivated. Jalen felt a thrill. The galaxy had forgotten this starship. Humans had been too small, too limited to touch it. But now, here was a human, standing in its heart, understanding what it could do. The moment was broken by a noise, a soft clank from one of the corridors. Jalen froze. The ship was supposed to be empty. Slowly, he walked toward the sound, tools ready. Shadows flickered across the walls. Nothing, just structural settling, he muttered to himself. He returned to the core, but the warning lingered. He wasn't alone in the galaxy, and if anyone learned he had found the Titanis, they might come for it. Ignoring the unease, he focused on the core. He ran simulations, connecting his portable computer to its systems. Slowly, he began to understand the alien language of the circuits. Patterns emerged. Logic flowed in ways that were different from human engineering, but the principles weren't entirely alien. Jalen smiled. He could do this. He could make it work. He could bring the Titanis back to life. Hours turned into a full day. The sun rose on Zaref's dead planet, casting pale light through the gaps in the ship's hull. Jalen hadn't left the core chamber. He didn't eat much. He didn't sleep. He just worked, drawing diagrams, testing circuits, and watching the ship respond. Finally, a spark. A tiny light flickered across the orb in the center. The hum of the core grew slightly louder. Panels along the walls lit up in sequence, like the ship was waking from a long dream. Jalen's heart raced. "It's alive," he whispered. Suddenly, alarms, silent for decades, began to blink on the console. Not dangerous alarms, just notifications. But one read clearly, S-Westems online. Partial functionality. The ship was not just a husk. It had memory. It had power, and somehow it seemed to trust him. He leaned back, exhausted but exhilarated. One human mechanic. Alone in a forgotten starship. And now, the first step toward awakening the Titan. A soft vibration ran through the floor beneath him, almost like the ship was breathing. Jalen knew deep down that this was only the beginning. Somewhere in the void, the galaxy continued, unaware. But in this silent tomb of steel and light, one human had found a sleeping giant, and he was about to wake it. And as the stars outside shone coldly in the void, Jalen whispered, smiling, "Let's see what you can really do." The ship's hum had become a quiet companion, a steady rhythm under his feet that seemed almost alive. He walked the corridors of the Titanis with careful steps, every movement echoing in the hollow metal halls. His scanner lit up panels that had been dark for decades, and every so often, a light flickered as if the ship itself was waking to his presence. He had a plan. Slowly, piece by piece, he would reactivate the ship. But alien technology was not simple. Circuits responded to logic patterns far different from human designs, and sometimes the ship projected even the smallest change. Jalen had to think differently. "Think like it thinks," he whispered. "Not like me." Hours turned into days. Jalen lived on minimal rations, eating dehydrated food and drinking recycled water from his suit. He patched broken wires, rerouted power conduits, and rewrote control sequences. For every problem solved, 10 more appeared. Some panels refused to respond. Some rooms were locked behind energy fields that made the air feel thick and heavy. Yet, he persisted. Then came the breakthrough. In a room that appeared to be the control center of the ship's propulsion system, Jalen found a console untouched by corrosion. Its interface was alien but elegant, a holographic panel floating above a polished metal table. He studied it for hours, tracing the lines of energy with his fingers. Slowly, he realized that the propulsion system was not just a way to move the ship. It was a network of energy that connected every part of the ship to the central core. If he could bring this system online, he could power up the ship's other systems too. He activated the console carefully. Lights flickered across the room. The ship shivered lightly, as if testing its own strength. For the first time in decades, the Titanicus hummed with purpose, the sound deep and resonant. Jalen smiled. "Hello, old friend," he said softly. It wasn't perfect. Some systems went offline as others came online. Panels sparked. A small alarm flashed in red, but the ship was responding. It was alive. As he worked, he noticed something strange. The ship's sensors were picking up movement outside the hull, small shadows drifting in the void. Jalen paused, scanning carefully. It wasn't asteroids. Something else was there. Alien scavengers. They were circling, curious about the faint energy readings the Titanic now emitted. Jalen knew the stories. Anyone who tried to take the ship usually never returned. But he didn't panic. He had an advantage. They expected an empty husk. They didn't expect a human mechanic who could think in ways no alien engineer could. "Time to speed things up," he muttered, fingers flying over the console. He focused on the ship's energy conduits, rerouting power to defensive systems. The ship didn't have weapons in the traditional sense. It didn't need them. The Titanic had something far better: energy manipulation, force fields, and ancient alien technology that could control movement, shields, and energy flows across vast distances. By morning, the ship was partially functional. Its engines hummed. Lights traced the hull. Energy shields flickered faintly across the docking bays. Jalen could move through the ship quickly, almost as if it were helping him. Then came the most astonishing moment. While exploring the ship's navigation deck, Jalen activated a holographic star map. It showed not just local systems, but hundreds of distant points connected by glowing lines. And at the center, one large red dot pulsed. "Coordinates! They're here." "They're all connected," Jalen whispered. "This ship, it could link to them." The implication hit him. The Titanic was not just a ship. It was a node, a control center. If reactivated fully, it could influence other machines, perhaps even dormant alien warships. In the wrong hands, it would be a weapon. But Jalen wasn't thinking of war. He thought of protection, of defense, of keeping entire colonies safe. His thoughts were interrupted by a noise, a faint clank far down the corridor. He froze. The shadows he had seen earlier were getting closer. Jalen moved cautiously, keeping his tools ready. The scavengers were small ships, fast and agile, but lightly armed. Their AI drones patrolled the area, scanning for life forms. He could see them on the ship's sensors, tiny dots moving along the hull. Instead, he improvised. Using the ship's partial systems, he created holographic decoys, images of corridors, lights, and shadows, making it seem as if the ship was full of life, full of defenses. The scavengers slowed, confused by what they saw on their sensors. "Not today," Jalen muttered, smiling. "You'll have to try harder." He spent the next hours moving through the ship, avoiding detection and continuing to activate systems. Some panels were stubborn. Some energy nodes refused to accept his commands. But each small success made the ship stronger, more alive. By nightfall, it was partially awake, humming like a creature stretching after a long sleep. He leaned against the console, eyes closed. The ship's hum was soothing. It was responding to him, almost as if it understood his intentions. Then, the holomap flickered again. Another red dot appeared, this one even brighter. The ship was showing him a target, a location in deep space. Not a place of attack, but of significance. Jalen studied it carefully. ancient alien infrastructure, long abandoned. If reactivated, it could boost the Titanis' capabilities even further. "This isn't just about me," he said softly. "This ship, it can help others." The realization filled him with awe. He was a human mechanic, standing alone in the heart of a forgotten alien starship. And yet, he was beginning to awaken something beyond imagination. Suddenly, alarms blared across the ship, not from the scavengers, but from internal systems. A section of the hull had destabilized. A plasma conduit had overloaded. Sparks flew across the floor. Jalen reacted quickly, rerouting power, adjusting the energy flow, and stabilizing the system. The ship seemed to sigh in relief, as if acknowledging his skill. Exhausted but determined, Jalen moved to the central core. He placed his hands on the glowing orb. It pulsed in response, a soft blue light spreading across the room. The ship's hum grew louder, resonating through his chest. For a moment, Jalen imagined the galaxy. Scattered colonies, drifting ships, lost settlements. All of it could be protected if he succeeded. All of it could be connected. All of it could be defended without a single shot fired. He smiled. "We're just getting started." The scavengers had not left. They were waiting, circling the orbit, studying every flicker of light. They didn't know that the ship was no longer just a relic. It was alive. It was thinking. And it had a human mind guiding it. Jalen returned to work, hands flying over controls, rerouting energy, activating shields, and connecting systems. Every small success brought a new flicker of light across the hull. The Titanis was waking up, responding to human ingenuity in ways its creators had never imagined. Night turned into day. Or rather, the artificial lights of the ship became Jalen's day. He worked tirelessly, understanding systems, rerouting energy, and improvising solutions to problems no alien engineer had solved for decades. And in the quiet moments, he listened to the hum of the ship. He felt it learning from him, adjusting to him. A bond formed, silent but strong. For the first time, Jalen realized something extraordinary. This was not just a machine, it was a partner. And together, they could change the galaxy. Somewhere far away, other derelict ships drifted, their power dormant. But Jalen didn't think about them yet. For now, he had awakened a giant. And that was enough to make even the bravest scavenger think twice before approaching. As he leaned back, exhausted but alive with excitement, he whispered to the ship, "Tomorrow, we explore the limits. Tomorrow, we see what we can really do." And in the silence that followed, the ship hummed in agreement. The Titanis had grown quiet and powerful. Its hum was no longer a whisper. It was a pulse, steady and alive, resonating through every corridor and chamber. Jalen walked its decks with confidence now, moving like someone who belonged. Every panel he touched glowed softly, and systems long dormant responded immediately. Outside, the alien scavengers had not left. They lingered in orbit, circling like vultures, scanning the Titanis for signs of life. They expected the ship to be a lifeless relic, easy to claim. They did not expect a human. Jalen, of course, had no intention of being caught, but he wasn't thinking of fighting them either. Humans rarely fought the impossible head-on. They used brains, creativity, and patience. That was the advantage. He began with the energy systems. With careful manipulation, he connected the propulsion core to the ship's outer shield matrix. Small shields lit up around the hull, invisible to the naked eye but ready to respond to movement, temperature, or energy fluctuations. Then he activated the internal environmental systems, letting the ship regulate pressure, air, and temperature automatically. It was subtle, elegant, and silent, but it gave him control. "This ship, it's incredible," he whispered. "It listens." He tested the defensive systems by sending small drones out into the docking bays. A Titanic starship left to rot. One human mechanic made it a galactic superweapon. Jalen wiped the grease from his hands and looked up at the sky. Even from the dusty plains of his small colony, the stars were sharp and bright tonight. But one object above them caught his eye. A faint shimmer, almost like a ghost. It wasn't a star. It wasn't a planet. It was something else, something enormous. He knew immediately. The old stories were true. Out in the orbit of the dead planet Zareth, there floated a ship. Not just any ship, but a starship so massive that entire cities could fit inside its hull. It had been abandoned for decades. For the galaxy, it was just a relic, a corpse drifting in the void. But for Jalen, it was a challenge. People call it a ruin, he muttered to himself, but I call it opportunity. Jalen was a mechanic, but not just any mechanic. While most people worked on ships small enough to fit a hangar, he fixed things no one else could. Ancient engines, broken drones, derelict satellites. If it had parts, he could make it move again. And this ship was the ultimate puzzle. He checked his small shuttle, the Hawkling. Its engines hummed softly, warmed and ready. Supplies were limited. Food, oxygen, tools, but that was enough. Jalen had survived worse situations before. What mattered was the ship. "Let's see what secrets you hide," he whispered. The journey to the derelict was long. The starship, called simply Titanic in old records, was a shadow against the blackness of space. Even from orbit, its scale was breathtaking. Towers of metal reached hundreds of meters high. Its hull was scratched, scarred from asteroid collisions and years of neglect. Some panels floated nearby, drifting slowly, as if waving in a silent farewell. Jalen's heart pounded. No human had boarded it in decades. Every story about it was filled with warnings. Human intuition allowed him to make connections the alien engineers had never imagined. By rerouting energy, he increased efficiency, reduced power loss, and activated dormant modules that controlled propulsion, life support, and sensors. Hours passed, and the ship's hum became more consistent, more confident. It was a living machine, but one guided by a human mind. Jalen felt a strange pride. No alien engineer could have done this. They followed strict protocols, rigid patterns. Humans could improvise, humans could adapt. And that was what was making the Titanic more than the sum of its parts. Suddenly, the holographic star map blinked red again. One of the distant alien installations had powered up unexpectedly. The ship was responding, its network linking to distant machines. The power flowed through the conduits Jalen had activated, lighting up the Titanic like a constellation inside a ship. Jalen realized the potential. The ship could protect colonies, redirect dangerous asteroids, or neutralize hazards without firing a single shot. It could serve as a guardian. And all of it was possible because a single human mind had dared to wake it. But the scavengers were still a problem. They were persistent, probing the outer hull, trying to find a way in. Jalen decided it was time for a new tactic. Using the ship's learning systems, he created automated decoys, shapes of human crews moving through the corridors, lights flickering in sequences designed to mimic life. The scavenger drones reacted immediately, scanning and scanning, unable to discern what was real and what was illusion. And then, Jalen tried something daring. He activated the propulsion nodes in a low-level test. The ship didn't move, not yet. But the energy ripples extended outward, creating pressure waves that nudged the scavenger drones away. They didn't know what hit them. They just sensed a force they could not understand. "Goodbye, friends," Jalen muttered, smiling. For hours he experimented, pushing the ship further. Every time he solved a problem, the ship responded in kind, adapting to his methods. Jalen realized something profound. The Titanic wasn't just a machine. It was learning, evolving, alongside him. Its ancient technology was powerful, but human ingenuity was what made it alive. Then came a sudden alert. The scavengers had found a weak point. A small hatch, unnoticed by the Titanic's sensors, opened. They sent a boarding drone inside. Jalen froze, heart racing. He had to act fast. He rerouted power to the internal defenses, not weapons, but systems that controlled airflow, gravity, and movement. Doors sealed behind the drone. Corridors shifted slightly due to subtle adjustments in gravity, confusing its sensors. The drone stumbled, caught in a harmless but disorienting trap. Jalen breathed out slowly. "Not today," he whispered. It was a small victory, but significant. The ship trusted him, and he trusted the ship. Together, they could face anything. By the end of the cycle, Jalen had done what no one thought possible. The Titanic was awake, aware, and under human control. He had linked it partially to the alien network, tested its systems, and outsmarted scavengers without causing harm. He walked to the observation deck and gazed out at the galaxy. Stars glittered in the blackness, but one thought dominated his mind. He had only scratched the surface. The ship had more secrets, more power, more potential than he could imagine. And he would discover it all, one system at a time. A soft hum ran through the deck. Jalen placed a hand on the console, feeling the energy pulse beneath his fingers. It was almost like a heartbeat. And he realized that together they could change everything. The galaxy had underestimated humans, small, fragile, insignificant, until now. And as the scavengers retreated, confused and wary, Jalen smiled. He had proven something important. One human mind, clever and daring, could control a Titan. One human could awaken the past and shape the future. Somewhere in the galaxy, distant worlds waited, unaware that a silent guardian had risen. And that guardian was guided by ingenuity, courage, and a simple human mechanic who refused to quit. Jalen turned back to the consoles. More work awaited. The ship had more systems to learn, more mysteries to unlock. But he knew the truth now. The Titanus was no longer just a relic. It was a testament to what humans could do, a living example of curiosity, creativity, and courage. And as he prepared for the next stage, unlocking the ship's full potential, he whispered to the silent hull, "Tomorrow, we will show the galaxy what humans can really do." The Titanus was alive. Its hum filled every corridor, every deck, every chamber. What had once been a lifeless giant, drifting silently in orbit of a dead planet, was now awake, responsive, and under the guidance of one human mind. Jalen walked through the ship with a quiet awe. He had done it. But the work was far from finished. He had partially activated the systems, tested defenses, and outsmarted alien scavengers. Now, it was time to unlock the ship's true potential. Jalen moved to the central core chamber, the heart of the Titanus. The orb of pulsing blue light had grown brighter and steadier over the days, responding to his presence. He reached out and placed both hands on it. Energy flowed through him, not painfully, but as if the ship itself were welcoming him. "It's time," he whispered. He began activating the remaining systems. Panels across the ship lit up, sensors flickered to life, and the massive engines thrummed in harmony. The ship was no longer just a relic. It was a sentinel, a guardian, a superweapon, but one that relied on strategy, creativity, and precision rather than destruction. Using the holographic star map, Jalen identified several points of interest: isolated colonies, drifting stations, and potential hazards like asteroid belts that could threaten inhabited planets. The Titanus had the power to reach them all. He began with a test. A small meteor storm approached a nearby human colony. The planet's defense systems were outdated, barely functioning. Jalen activated the ship's energy conduits, focusing them on the path of the meteors. Light flared across space as energy waves pushed the rocks off course, harmlessly redirecting them into empty space. The colony below watched in astonishment as the threat vanished without a single shot fired. Jalen smiled. One human, guiding a machine of unimaginable power, had protected hundreds, maybe thousands of lives. Then came the scavengers. They had not given up. Smaller ships now lurked closer to the Titanus, attempting to probe the defenses. But Jalen was ready. He activated the ship's adaptive shields and projection systems. Holographic images of massive human crews patrolled the corridors. Lights flickered, shadows moved unpredictably. The scavengers' sensors went wild. They tried to board, but invisible force fields gently deflected them, nudging them away without causing harm. "They don't understand," Jalen muttered. "The ship doesn't need weapons. It has intelligence." He experimented further, linking the Titanus to dormant alien outposts. By sending small pulses of energy and data, he reactivated their navigation and defense systems, but only enough to prevent accidents. Entire networks of derelict machines now operated in harmony, guided by human intuition and strategy. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. Where others would have relied on brute force, Jalen relied on precision, understanding, and care. He moved like a conductor, orchestrating a symphony of technology that could protect millions without harming a single being. As night fell, or rather, as the artificial lights of the Titanus lit the dark corridors, Jalen paused on the observation deck. Stars glittered in the void. In the distance, the scavengers lingered, confused and wary. They had realized this ship was no ordinary relic. It had a mind, a purpose, and a human guiding it. Jalen felt a swell of pride. Humans were underestimated across the galaxy. Weak, fragile, insignificant, and yet here he was, a single mechanic awakening a Titan, teaching it to protect rather than destroy. He accessed the ship's communication systems, sending a simple, universal signal, a message of peace and warning. Human-guided Titanus operational. Approach with respect. Harm will be deflected. Across the void, the scavengers received it. Some hesitated. Some retreated. The Titanus did not strike, but it was clear it could. The galaxy was learning that humans were clever, adaptable, and capable of guiding unimaginable power. Hours later, Jalen tested the ship's full movement systems. The engines roared to life, propelling the giant vessel gracefully through space. It moved like a living organism, smooth and precise despite its enormous size. He navigated around planets, through asteroid belts, and past derelict stations. Every maneuver demonstrated that one human could guide this Leviathan with skill unmatched by any alien engineer. But the greatest test came unexpectedly. A neighboring star system faced a crisis. A massive comet was on a collision course with a human colony. There was no time for conventional defense. Jalen reacted instantly. He directed the Titanus toward the comet, projecting energy waves to break its trajectory. The massive rock split into harmless fragments, redirected safely into the void. The colony below never knew how close they had come to disaster. Jalen's heart raced with exhilaration. This was what humans could do: think, adapt, solve problems in ways no one else could. The Titanus was not a weapon for war, it was a guardian for life. As the ship settled back into orbit, Jalen explored more of its systems. He discovered communication links to other alien civilizations, long dormant. With care, he sent messages of peace and knowledge, sharing the existence of the Titanus and its human guide. The galaxy began to stir with curiosity and respect. Humans were no longer small and weak. They were leaders, thinkers, and protectors. The scavengers, watching from afar, began to understand. The humans had something more than firepower. They had creativity, ingenuity, and the courage to face challenges others could not. They would not attack the ship again. The Titanus was too clever, too alive, and its human guide too brilliant. Jalen walked through the corridors, hands brushing over the glowing panels. The ship pulsed beneath his touch, alive and trusting. He thought of all the people who could now be safe because of one human's persistence. One human who dared to dream, to explore, to awaken a giant. The Titanus was more than a machine. It was a symbol, a demonstration of what humanity could achieve when it combined courage, intelligence, and heart. In the quiet of the central core, Jalen allowed himself a moment of reflection. The galaxy had underestimated humans for too long, but now, with the Titanus, everything had changed. He looked out through the observation deck, across the star-studded void. Somewhere, distant planets and colonies were alive with ordinary humans going about their lives, unaware that one mechanic and one ship had just shifted the balance of the galaxy. And as he stood there, he realized the truth. The Titanus was not just a ship, nor was it a weapon in the traditional sense. It was a promise that humans, small and underestimated, could awaken greatness, protect life, and change the course of civilizations, not through brute force, but through ingenuity, courage, and determination. Jalen smiled, feeling the hum of the ship resonate with his own heartbeat. "Ready for the next adventure?" he asked softly. The Titanus thrummed in response, as if agreeing. For the first time in decades, the derelict starship of legend was awake. Guided by a human mind, it would protect, guide, and inspire the galaxy. Humanity had not just survived, it had triumphed in a way no one had expected. And somewhere, far across the galaxy, another forgotten giant waited silently in the void, perhaps waiting for the next human mind brave enough to awaken it. But for now, Jalen and the Titanus floated among the stars, guardians of the future, a living proof that one human could change everything. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. Dangerous systems, rogue energy fields, alien technology that no one could control. But Jalen didn't care. He had never been afraid of a challenge. "Docking sequence," he muttered, sliding his hand over the console. The shuttle approached one of the massive landing bays, though it was cracked and partially collapsed. The bay doors had long since rusted, and some sections floated free, spinning lazily in space. Carefully, he guided the Hawkling through the gap. Sparks flew as the shuttle brushed against jagged metal, but nothing critical broke. Once inside, the sheer size of the place made him dizzy. The chamber was bigger than anything he had ever seen, taller than the tallest towers on his home colony. Shadows stretched across walls lined with alien panels, strange glyphs glowing faintly. The silence was complete, except for the faint hum of dormant energy coursing somewhere deep inside. Jalen stepped out of his shuttle, boots echoing on the metal floor. He pulled out his tools and scanner. The air inside was mostly gone, but a small atmosphere remained in pockets near the core of the ship. He didn't need much. His suit could supply oxygen for hours. He moved cautiously, exploring. Every corridor was a labyrinth. Some parts were smashed, others perfectly preserved. It was clear that the Titanus had been abandoned in a hurry. He could almost feel the lives of its builders long gone. After hours of exploring, Jalen reached the ship's heart, the central core chamber. It was enormous. The floor glowed faintly, as if the metal itself was alive. At the center floated a strange orb, pulsing with soft blue light. It hummed, low and deep, like the heartbeat of the ship itself. Jalen stepped closer, eyes wide. He scanned it carefully. The readings were alive, not dangerous, at least not yet. But it was powerful, far beyond anything humans had built. This is what they used to call the power core, he whispered. The holographic shields flickered and adjusted, diverting power to sections under threat. Jalen realized that the ship's AI wasn't gone. It had been dormant. Now it learned from him, responding to his thoughts, adapting faster than any human mind could. And then he reached the moment he had been waiting for. Full operational control. He stood at the main console, fingers poised over the touch panels. The star map glowed before him. The red dots of distant alien outposts, derelict war machines, and lost starships blinked steadily. Each one could be reached, connected, or activated. The ship was more than a vessel. It was a network, and Jalen was its center. A notification appeared on the console. Proximity alert. One of the scavenger ships had moved closer, entering a blind spot of the sensors. Jalen smiled. Time to test ingenuity. He didn't fire weapons. He didn't need to. The Titanus had tools far more impressive than brute force. Using the ship's energy grids, he projected holographic illusions of massive human crews patrolling corridors. He rerouted lights, generating moving shadows and sounds. To the scavengers, the derelict starship seemed alive and well guarded. The alien drones scanned and hesitated. They transmitted back images to their mother ship, and Jalen could see them reacting in real time on the console. They were confused. They had expected an empty hull, a prize waiting in orbit. Instead, the ship seemed awake, aware, and human. Jalen chuckled. Let's make it worse for them. He activated energy pulses along the hull, harmless but precise. Lights flared in patterns, reflections bouncing across the void. It was mesmerizing, almost hypnotic. The scavengers retreated slightly, unsure if the ship's defenses were automated or sentient. Inside, Jalen returned to the main systems. He had not just learned to operate the Titanus, he had begun improving it.